former chief economic advisor, former chief economist at the World Bank, professor at in America, Dr. Kaushik Basu from University of Illinois, joins us at the moment from Cornell. Appreciate your joining us. Let me start, Dr. Basu, with the big concern that you have expressed. You have said in a recent statement that you believe India's economic growth in 2020-21 could be its lowest since 1947, and the recent GDP figures show India has fared the worst amongst G20 nations. Why do you think we are doing so much worse than other countries at the moment?
Rajdeep, there are two aspects to it, the short run and the long run. Let's first take the short run. It's now becoming clear that our management of the pandemic is turning out to be very poor. What happened with the lockdown, and now with more data coming in, this is becoming more transparent, is India's lockdown was described as a very, very severe lockdown. And for 95% of the population, it was very severe. But ironically, for 5% of the population, which in India is a mega population, there was no lockdown because they were scattered all over the country, walking the streets. So it was a strange lockdown where you had tens of millions of people being scattered through the country through no fault of theirs. They had to get livelihood. The consequence of that is now becoming clear from the data. If you look at the total number of people infected with COVID in April, 23% was rural. Now 54% is rural. So it's spread into the rural area. Also, if you look at global table, the COVID usually picks up for 2 months and then it begins to taper off across the board. In the United States, which has done badly, it rose for about 2 months and then it has stayed there. In India, for about 4 months, the COVID is just rising and rising and rising, and in an exponential way, which is very rare. I think the initial lockdown, since it had no supporting policies, has backfired in a very big way. So the short-run problem for economic growth is that the lockdown's design has affected the COVID, and this is affecting international mood. Investment into India is not coming out. Unemployment in India in the months of April and May shot to over 23%, a rare rise in unemployment. So you froze the economy totally and allowed a whole lot of people to be scattered all over. So the germs were spreading and the economy was frozen. So the short-run problem is that, and you can see it in the fact that capital inflow into India, which was expected in a big way, is not happening. Number two is the long run. India's growth had been dropping from 2016. If you go back to 2016, the growth rate that year was 8.2%, and then something happened. After that, for 5 years, every year, the growth rate is less than the previous year. So 5 years of going down the steps is an extremely worrying situation that has happened in India. Why did that happen? Difficult to say. Long-run growth has lots of drivers. There are two drivers which we have to keep in mind. India's investment rate, the fraction of the national income that is going in as investment for the future, has dropped very, very steadily. And in fairness, Rajdeep, the drop began when I was in government. Small drops were taking place. 2009, 10, it was dropping in a small way. So it began then, but it's a sharp decline after that. Investment is going down. And I think something has to do with the politics of India. It's become so divisive. There's so little trust that even an organization like JP Morgan recently pointing out that investors are worried about the rise of populism in India. I think this long-run driver over the last 5 years and the very poor management of the pandemic with the lockdown, which was a classic case of freeze the economy and spread the germs. And that is what is really affecting India. But once again, Rajdeep, as I'm speaking, India has two strengths, which in the post-pandemic world should allow India to come out on top. India is very strong in the IT sector, which will grow. India is very strong in the pharmaceutical sector, which will become stronger. So unless we mess up policies altogether, India should be able to come out. But right now, the scenario is looking bleak.